Oh yeah, this is a church. For those who don't know me, I'm Paul Cusick. I'm the mayor of Bellevue. I just want to thank A Better Bellevue for holding this. I was asked by both sides, because been sitting on the fence on this, I was asked by both sides to help them. I refused both sides. For a couple of reasons, I didn't want to lend the office of mayor going one way or the other. Not that people consider it that important, but it might. I would like to thank everybody for being here. The reason I asked if I could just say a word or two was that I think this is one of the most important issues that have come before Bellevue in a long time. This will change Bellevue. Some people think for the better, some people think for the worse, depending on which way the vote goes. I have no partiality. I have hopes on one side and fears on the other, like everybody else. One thing I will ask is this is a highly emotional ballot question. I ask everybody to respect the other people when they ask their questions. We were out at Wilkinsburg where it was going through the same type of thing. There was some issues where people wanted to kind of take over the meeting and give their opinion and not worry about the other opinion. We'd like to hear everybody's opinion. I think there's a number of people who can see this both ways, whether I know I enjoy when I go out to a dinner to sit down and have a glass or two of wine with the dinner. People say, why can't you do that in Bellevue? And I don't think anybody really has a problem with that. I think the fears are more of the other way it can go with, as the sign says, no bars in Bellevue type of thing. Can it go that way? I don't know. That's part of my quandary. But I ask you to, can you hear, can everybody hear me? Okay, well.
We should probably shut those doors. Even just a little, Paul, a little closer to the microphone. Just a little closer.
I think it would. That works. Okay, let's just leave. We'll just have the people. That'll probably work, especially for us. One more thing before I turn this over. I would like to thank the two gentlemen, Ken Say and Patrick Riley from the PLCB, who are here to really give us a lot of good information. They were at the Wilkinsburg thing, and it was fantastic. So let's get this thing going. First, let me say one thing. Is there anybody from the No Bars in Bellevue group who would like to give a little talk from their point of view? If not, I'll turn it over to Grant. And, yes. Well, we can't have everybody just coming up and giving their say. Doing the questions, if you would, please. I was just that those two have been going back and forth, those groups. So they will have a question and answer period, as you can see there. So I'll turn this over to Grant, and thank you, and please consider carefully what you're doing. Thank you.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Yes. Okay. First thing I wanted to do is thank everybody for coming out. This is a really big topic for Bellevue. I wanted to introduce myself real quick. My name is Grant Saylor, and I am a lifelong Bellevue resident. I raised my 3 children here. My kids all went to school here. I'm not raising, but I have 3 grandchildren living in Bellevue, a 4th on the way. So we're a pretty deep-rooted family in Bellevue. And I'm involved quite a bit. I ran for council a couple years ago. I'm running for council again. I am very deeply rooted and care very deeply about this community. So I don't take this lightly. So we've done a lot of homework. What I want to do is I want to just share some information with you, but the meat of this, I'm going to turn it over to the gentlemen that are here from the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. But what I wanted to do is just give you a little bit of an idea of why we're looking at what we're looking at. So why liquor licenses? So we're looking to attract more business and customers to the Bellevue downtown business district. We're looking to create jobs. New restaurants that come into the area are going to bring new jobs. We're looking to boost the economy. How many of you go outside of the borough to spend your dining dollars? We can bring that money back into town. Increased property values. If you look at some of the surrounding communities that have bustling restaurants and nightlife, think about the home values in those communities and what they've done over the last 10 years. We're looking to enhance the Bellevue Business District. How many empty storefronts do we have in Bellevue? Quite a few. It's very challenging in this environment to open a successful, long-standing business. We do have quite a few long-standing, fine businesses in this business district. We're looking to enhance that. We're also looking to support the existing businesses that are here by driving more foot traffic to our community. So, a couple of things we're looking for. We're looking to advocate for community change through active development of the core business district. So that is a little bit deeper than, let's put bars in Bellevue. We're advocating for the development of our core business district. Bringing new and existing businesses that will benefit from a business-friendly atmosphere. An enhanced community image and identity will foster community pride. So think about going to a really nice restaurant in downtown Bellevue, having dinner, taking some friends from out of town. How does that make our business district look? Liquor licensing will be addressed appropriately to stimulate business development. We're not talking about putting a bar on in every vacant storefront in Bellevue. We already have developed strong partnerships with other businesses, residents, and community development corporations around the city that are using some of the tools that are in place by the Liquor Control Board to regulate these things. So, it's creating enhanced accountability. So, we're looking to develop a business district plan, pursuing the option to allow liquor licenses to a limited number of eating establishments is one of the objectives of a Better Bellevue to help us improve the economic vitality of the business district. Several of the key market considerations of the plan, which would support the liquor license option, include balance. So a balanced business district should include a mix of uses that includes retail, services, dining, entertainment, and office space. That represents a balanced business district. Nightlife. It's important to remember that a business district has both day and evening activities. A mix of businesses and the hours of operations should support both. The 10-10-10 rule. This isn't something I made up. A vibrant urban center usually has 10 establishments that provide food, 10 establishments where people can shop, and 10 establishments that are open after 6 p.m. So, some background, just some market study stuff that was, so these are observations from a study that was done by Allegheny Together a few years back. These are not recommendations by Allegheny Together, they're observations that were made in this market study. So the Allegheny Together study of Bellevue found that the borough's liquor license ban is discouraging potential restaurants and small businesses from opening in Bellevue. There's a good opportunity, these are quotes from that study, there is a good opportunity to expand dining options, particularly if the residents of Bellevue elect to allow alcohol sales in Bellevue. The only segment that we feel is notably weak in Bellevue Business District is entertainment. The loss of the local movie theater a few years ago was unfortunate. The borough's prohibition on alcohol, which certainly has some benefit, also limits the options for restaurants. The business district also is missing opportunities to bring new customers and energy by not having more options. Those are quotes directly from that study. So where are we now? So between February and the beginning of March, we went out, there were about 20 of us went out and collected signatures on the petition for the referendum to show up on the ballot. We turned in sufficient signatures to get the referendum on the ballot, so here we stand. On March 23rd, the Allegheny County Law Department approved the following question to be placed on the primary ballot on May 19th, 2015. Do you favor the granting of liquor licenses for the sale of liquor in the borough of Bellevue? That is the question that you will see when you step into the polls on May 19th. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Ken Say and Pat Riley. They are with the Bureau of Licensing with the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board. And they're going to share some information with you. I'm just going to pass it over to them. Let me know when you want to, yeah, let me know when you need to change the slide. I'm your human remote control. Good evening. Am I projecting loud enough here? Yes. A little louder? Better? I'll try to maintain that level. My name is Pat Riley. This is Ken Say. We're with the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Board, the Bureau of Licensing. Now, just to get it out of the way right up front, we're not the enforcement arm. A lot of people think we're the Liquor Control Board, we're the guys doing the enforcement. That's the Liquor Control Enforcement that works for the Pennsylvania State Police. Our agency regulates the issuance and renewal of liquor licenses. We're not a criminal justice agency. We review and administer the liquor licenses. And as Grant said, you have a ballot question coming up, a very important ballot question, whether or not to allow the sale of liquor in your borough. You're currently dry for the sale of for liquor licenses, full liquor licenses, and malt or brewed beverage licenses, beer-only licenses, retail. You do have one beer distributor and one importing beer distributor in your borough already. They're not covered by your prohibition. Retail licenses are, which is what we're going to talk about tonight primarily. And I'm going to be speaking moving forward, because if you don't pass the resolution, there's nothing I really could say to you. So I'm going to be talking about under the assumption, not pro or con, that the referendum passed. And we're not here to advocate one way or another whether it should pass, whether it should not be passed, whether it should go wet or stay dry. We're just here to present you with the facts and give you as much knowledge as we can so that you can make your educated decision on the ballot, okay? So your question, do we allow those? If you pass the resolution, then the law will allow for retail liquor licenses and or retail malt or brewed beverage licenses. These are, I'm going to commonly refer to them as restaurant liquor licenses. There's no bar license or nightclub license in Pennsylvania. They're all restaurant liquor licenses, which means you have to maintain the minimum requirements for a restaurant to qualify for a liquor license. They are very minimum. Don't think you have to be an Olive Garden to get a liquor license. There's minimum food and seating and space requirements that you must meet. So you do have to have food with the operation. The retail license quota for your borough is 2 based on your population. Okay, what that means is if you pass the referendum, you don't get 2 free licenses, and that's because the county quota is exceeded. Trying to get a joke out of Ken here. He doesn't like when I talk about the county quota. It confuses us, so I'm not going to. You have 2 licenses, but those licenses would have to be transferred in here from somewhere else in Allegheny County. The law allows for intermunicipal transfers within the county. So the first 2 that would apply would make application to us, and we would vet that application, and if they qualified and there were no protests or petitions to intervene against the license by the citizenry, which I'll get into in a little bit, we would issue those 2 licenses to whatever location in your borough they selected, that they occupy. Let me talk a little bit about the initial application process for those 2 types of licenses, and it would be for the same. After 2 licenses, if more want to come in, then the municipality has more control over who and under what conditions the liquor license would come into your borough. But let's just talk about the first 2 for now. An entity or a person or persons would have to make a written and multi-layered application to us. And the first thing they would have to do upon that application is put up a public notice of application for a liquor license. Ken's holding one up now. And this would go on the building
where the people or person wants to put a liquor license. And it tells you who's applying, what type of license it is, if they intend to have amusement at that premise, and who can protest the issuance of that liquor license. Basically, residents within 500 feet of the actual proposed license area could file a protest if they feel the placement of a liquor license would adversely affect the health and welfare of that area. What we call restrictive institutions, a church, a school, a municipal playground, certain other entities, there's several, within 300 feet could also file a protest against the issuance of the liquor license. Anyone, even if they're not a resident who would have say a business interest within that 5-foot area, even though they didn't reside there, say they had another, like a dry cleaning shop within the 500-foot radius, owned by someone who didn't live in the 5-foot radius, and they felt the area was going to be degraded because of the issuance of a liquor license, they could file what is called a petition to intervene on behalf of the area. So they're all, basically in a nutshell, they're the different people and entities that upon application are eligible to file a protest against the liquor license. That all goes on, you have to file that within 30 days of that orange sign to be a valid protestant. Once that is filed, that automatically would trigger, we find out if it's a valid protest, meaning you're eligible to protest, and then the licensing application process would go on, but we would not issue the license until there was a hearing held on the matter, and the protestants and the applicant for the liquor license would get a chance to present their case to what we call an administrative law judge. Think of it as a courtroom. It's not a full court of law, but the rules of a courtroom apply. It's an administrative hearing. The protestants give their side, the applicant gives it their side, and the hearing examiner would make a decision, okay, which are appealable to county court by either side. Part of that process that I'm going to get into later, and it's not up on the slide yet, and I'll get in depth, would be part of that process is you can elect to, and at this point in the application process, it's generally negotiating by both sides, impose what is called a conditional licensing agreement, which I'm going to refer to as a CLA, which the protesting group or the concerned citizens, do not necessarily be protesting, could be a concerned citizens group or the municipality could request that additional conditions, restrictions be placed on the license. And when we get into the next slide, Ken and I will talk about what some of those restrictions are. So that could be part of the application process where both parties negotiate and agree to place additional restrictions on the liquor license above and beyond what the law calls for. So that would be your initial two applications could go that way. If there's no protests and they meet requirements, they meet all the municipal requirements for zoning, occupancy, whatever else exists in your municipal ordinances, they would be issued a liquor license. If there's a protest, or if there's something in their application that we don't like, where their money's coming from, criminal record of the applicant, something like that, then the liquor board could, even without your protest, decide not to issue the liquor license. Okay. They're the first two. Your quota is 2. After that, you still can get liquor licenses transferred into your borough, but anything over the quota, meaning number 3, a municipal resolution is required for us to even consider the application. That means your borough would have to, whoever wants to put the third or beyond liquor license into your borough would have to go to the borough and apply to them first. The borough would have to have post a public notice of hearing on the issue, have a public hearing where the citizens could offer input, and then the borough council would vote on whether or not to allow the application of the liquor license. They're not approving the liquor license, they're saying, we're allowing you to apply to the liquor board for a liquor license at this address in Bellevue. At that point, it could just be that, they pass the resolution, or depending on assuming concerned citizen input, they could also, by their authority, the municipal authority, say, okay, we'll pass this resolution, however, we want to place restrictions on the liquor license. So before it even gets to us, on the third one and up, the borough and citizenry can, within their own municipal government framework, place restrictions on the liquor license. And again, I don't want to steal our thunder from the next slide, but those restrictions could be pretty much anything as long as it's not illegal or discriminatory. Okay? If someone were to want to build or if there is a building in the borough that would qualify as a hotel with a minimum of 16 rooms, hotels are not subject to the quota. So they would just make application and there wouldn't be the requirement or need for a municipal resolution, even if the quota is exceeded, because hotels are in excess of are not considered under the quota. And the reason that like hotels or a golf course even would get a license outside the quota is the thinking is they're bringing more than just the restaurant bar to the economy, to the municipality. They're bringing a whole other business with them, so they're not restricted by the quota. If and when licenses are issued and they show an operational history of not being not operating in a responsible manner, and there's problems that require the police to respond, that they're not being good neighbors, disorderly operations, things like that, and the police, the city government, any concerned citizen could, throughout a 2-year renewal, the licenses are good for a 2-year renewal period. At the end of the 2-year renewal period is when we consider their operational history. So at the end of the 2-year renewal period, they've shown themselves to be not a good neighbor, not running an orderly operation. They could be considered under the nuisance bar program. We can only do that at the 2-year renewal period, which is in Allegheny County, is the end of this month. So we would be vetting those from like March, I guess, to May, the nuisance bars. And there's several levels of what we could do with nuisance bars. Issue warnings. If they don't rise to the level of non-renewal, if they're really bad, they could rise to the level of non-renewal, and we could say, we're not renewing it. And they don't get the license. That is, of course, they could appeal to county court on that also. There would be a hearing, and they could appeal, even if the hearing with us, we still overturned or didn't renew them, they could appeal to county court too. So at that point, that's one of the other restrictions that controls the Liquor Control Board has, and you as a citizenry and a municipal government would have over the liquor license. But it's only for us at the 2-year renewal period. Any other time, police incidents, the liquor control enforcement, if you have complaints or issues, law enforcement can take action against the license. Typically, liquor control enforcement can cite them. Citations against the license would then be considered at the renewal period. Citations could go up to suspension of licenses for a period of time and revocation, but revocation is very, very extreme. I'm not going to kid you that that's something that happens routinely, but there are fines, points against your license, more or less called points against your license, and suspensions, which law enforcement can impose on a bad behaving bar. We can't until the renewal period. Grant has these brochures. It's called 4 Ways to Close a Nuisance Bar, and the most commonly used one, short of non-renewal by us, would be getting your district attorney, your police, your city government involved, and they could, what they call, padlock the bar. They could say it could be declared by the court a general nuisance based on evidence. This is all just, hey, I want it closed. You got to have evidence that's sustainable in a legal proceeding. And it happens. I've seen several throughout the state. It's a bad place. We can't do anything. The liquor board can't do anything to it because we're in the middle of renewal period. But the DA generally, the district attorney, and you have a very aggressive district attorney in Allegheny County and county detective staff that goes after these places, can padlock the thing for a period of 1 year. Before we get into, excuse me, the CLAs, the conditional licensing, just up there, if you want to make note of it, are some phone numbers. The 717 is the licensing clearinghouse number in Harrisburg if you have questions on a liquor license in particular. The local number is your local office, and Mr. Say is the regional manager for the Western Pennsylvania area. So that's his phone number. And the website is our public website. If you haven't ever seen it, now is a really good time to take a look at it. There is a lot of useful information on that. We have our own in-house website that's supposed to have everything. I go to the public website sometimes for the information on there. So I encourage you to take a look at that website. And it's going to have a lot of the information I'm talking about right now. So you have something you can put your hands on, print out, read, and refer back to. My lovely assistant. Conditional licensing agreements. I'm going to briefly go over what they are, and then Ken's going to talk about some of the conditions that are common to a conditional licensing agreement. Before I do that, I want to back up one other tool the municipality, but more so the citizenry, has with regards to controlling their liquor licenses within their municipality. You're going to put a ballot question on this upcoming ballot that reads, do you favor the granting of liquor licenses for the sale of liquor in the borough of Bellevue? And what you're saying is we're dry now, you want to be wet. All right? Yes, we want to be wet. No, we want to be dry. So let's assume again you vote yes. 4 years from now, in the same municipal election in 2019, you could put that exactly same worded question on the ballot. Do you favor the granting of liquor licenses, yes or no? And vote no. And then the Liquor Control Board can no longer issue licenses in your borough, and the ones that are issued, we cannot renew at the 2-year renewal point. So you do have that's a very hands-on control that you, the citizens, have over the liquor licenses in your borough. We're going to move on to conditional licensing. What it is, the CLA is an agreement between the Liquor Control Board and the licensee. It's signed by our Director of Licensing and a principal of the liquor license. It adds additional restraints, conditions above what the law has. The law says, here's what you've got to do, or here's what you must do, or here's what you can do, here's what you can't do with the liquor license. Conditional licensing agreements, the intent of them is to add additional restrictions tailored to the community and the licensee. They're binding on the licensee. That's in place there at that time. If that person decides to transfer the license to another entity, they're binding on that guy or entity or girl who takes over that license. That building has those conditions on it. That location has those conditions on it. You could propose these, and there's an application process. I told you about when you get to the past the quota and there's intermunicipal resolutions, the borough could do them then, and put the conditions on, or at any time, any valid protestant or group, or the borough, or whoever has a valid ability to protest, they can, what generally happens is they would get with the licensee and say, look, we're against the issuance of a liquor license here, but we're willing to negotiate, and if you, the licensee, agree to these conditions, we won't oppose your application process. So it's got to be something that both parties agree to. This is as they're applying, that both parties agree to, and present it to us. And if it's, again, if it's, we would have to say, yeah, we'll sign this conditional licensing agreement. And unless it's something illegal or discriminatory, we would sign it. We would agree to. First issue or transfer, that's the same thing. If they're transferring the license, the same type of vetting would go on, or the same ability to go forward with the CLA. Let me say though, if there's a liquor license granted for 123 Main Street, and then 3 years from now, the person who owns that now decides to sell it to another person, you can't protest by saying, we don't want that bar here in this location. Well, the bar's already there. You can protest the character of the people or persons buying that liquor license. So it's a little, once the thing gets in place, it's a little more difficult to protest the license because it's already there. But you still can go through the conditional licensing thing, and it doesn't, the conditional licensing agreement at that point would not be restricted just to the character. It could be restricted to whatever you want to propose and whatever the people agree to. And the same, the CLAs also come into play when we're vetting these licenses for renewal, if they've been a problem, if they're in the nuisance bar program, and maybe they don't rise to the level that we're going to not renew them, then we'll say, hey, you did this, you violated this, you did this bad, you did that bad. If you want the license renewed, you're going to have to agree to a conditional licensing agreement. So they're the time frames and the different nuances of conditional licensing agreement. And Ken's going to talk about some of the things that commonly go into a conditional licensing agreement. Ken?
Hi, everyone. As Mr. Riley said, the CLA is a binding agreement between the licensee and the LCB. And what it does is it addresses stipulations in addition to the laws already in place. Those of you that aren't familiar with the Liquor Code is a very, very comprehensive book full of all the laws, rules, regulations. These stipulations go above and beyond what the Liquor Code states that establishments have to maintain and the way establishments have to operate. CLA conditions pretty much run the gambit of anything that, how the establishment operates to the security of the establishment and legal issues. For instance, the operation part of a CLA could include the hours of operation itself. What hours are the establishment going to be open? What hours on each day are the establishment going to be open? It could have something to put restrictions on the percentage of food sales that the establishment is offering, that they have to maintain to keep an operation. It could go even as far as trash pickup. Are you cleaning up the sidewalk in front of your establishment? Are you getting your garbage picked up on a regular basis? It could also address the issue of entertainment, when entertainment is permitted and what type of amplification. These are all types of things that could possibly go into a CLA. And then there are also more security-based situations that a CLA will address. For instance, one of the most, in fact, I think every CLA that I've ever seen addresses training, ramp training. Is everybody familiar with RAMP, R-A-M-P? Responsible Alcohol Management Program. RAMP training is mandated in a CLA to make sure that the owners and operators and the bartenders are all trained in the proper way to card someone, the proper way to see if a person is visibly intoxicated, the proper way to render service in an establishment. So ramp training is pretty much of a standard issue in a CLA. Not only ramp, but it could address things like security. Is security personnel needed? Are they required? When are they required? How many security personnel are required? They could be things that are brought up in a CLA. It could be surveillance systems. We're all familiar now with surveillance cameras. There are CLAs that address the issue of you must have surveillance cameras. Not only that you must have surveillance, how many cameras you have to have and where the cameras are located. Are the cameras inside the bar, or is it mandated that you have to have outside surveillance on the outside of the establishment? That's another thing. A bar patron list, that seems to be something that comes up a lot of times. If there are patrons that are barred, they have to keep a record of that. And by the way, records are a big part of CLA. For instance, another thing could be that the bar, the establishment has to keep in contact with the local police. So a CLA may mandate that you have to contact your local police chief every quarter, every month, and you have to have a record of that contact so that somebody can go back and say, we talked with the police, we've had communication with the police throughout the process, and we talked to the police about the problems and any kind of issues. Again, a CLA can pretty much, it's up to the parties involved. What is presented, what is being asked for, what the licensee will consent to. There's no such thing as the standard CLA. A CLA can include all kind of different things depending on the establishment, the municipality, the people involved. Okay? Thank you.
That's all we have. Again, I encourage you to take advantage of our website for additional information or to make sure I was telling you the truth. I'm notorious for that, but I'm going to turn over. I don't know what the question and answers are going to be, but Ken and I will address any questions. We're not going anywhere. But I think we're waiting for a formal question and answer period.
Just 2 minutes. Thank you. Thanks, Pat and Ken, I appreciate it. So real quick, we'll get to the question and answers in 2 minutes. So next steps, so more information and frequently asked questions. So A Better Bellevue has a website. We have a myth versus fact where there's some FAQs there. There's some links to the LCB website as well. I encourage you to ask questions. In about 2 minutes, it's going to be an open question and answer session. What I'm going to ask you guys, we do have a really large crowd here. I'm going to try to facilitate those questions as best I can. Please raise your hand when you're called on. Please ask your question, either Ken and Pat, myself, Mayor Cusick. If you're interested in answering questions, I'd be happy to have you come up. But I'd like to keep this kind of controlled. We were at the Wilkinsburg meeting a couple weeks ago, and it just turned into just chaos. And I think we're all about that. So if this passes, what we're going to be looking to do, what A Better Bellevue is going to be looking to do, is to form a committee that consists of community members, business leaders, council people, people that are going to drive this process. So we need to take ownership of this process. This conditional license agreement process is out there. It's a very valid tool. If we don't use it, that's where we run into problems. But as a community, we have this tool at our disposal to place these conditions on these licensees. So, I would ask you to get involved, talk to me, talk to anybody about how you can get involved in that process. Also, if you want to get any information from us, here's an email address where you can reach us. The next thing, just make your voice heard, whichever side of this you're on. I'm not here to tell you to vote for it or against it. We're here to present factual information. But please go out and vote on May 19th, whatever side of the fence you're on. It really is a pivotal vote for Bellevue. So I ask you to weigh the options, and I ask you to go out and vote. At this point, questions? Sir?
So this is board record for the gentleman.
Okay.
So you said that a license must move into the area, and then you must apply for the license for building. But you cannot apply for that license to serve unless you've purchased and acquired a license elsewhere in the state, correct?
You can,
In the county, I'm sorry.
yeah, you can acquire, an entity or a person can acquire, what they do is they come to an agreement of sale with someone who has a liquor license in Allegheny County.
Right, and then once they have that license, then they can apply to.
They apply to us, they could either apply, if they already have occupancy of a building, they could apply to us for that building. If they need a premise to apply to.
Correct.
Okay, they can't just say, I want a liquor license, and I'll decide later where I'm gonna put it. They have to have their business entity form, a place to put the license, and a whole bunch of other stuff that doesn't really apply right here. They make application to us, and we vet the law.
And I just need more clarity, because you had mentioned before that there was a set number of licenses in Allegheny County. And before you can apply to open a business that serves alcohol, you must find a way to acquire this license from someone else
Right.
who is willing to part with that license. And from what I understand, that's a very expensive proposition.
It's what the market will bear, and yeah, it's generally expensive.
Understood.
We can't release numbers on it, but it's expensive.
We can't give you any kind of,
No,
people always look for a hard figure. We really can't give one because it's what the market will bear. What will somebody be willing to pay
Right.
to get that liquor license?
And from personal knowledge, I know that there was a business in the south side that sold both the property and the license for $500,000 for that with both the license and the property.
Well,
It depends where the property is.
Right, it was, that was, of course, that was in the south side, but, so it's, first you have to have a premise to apply to, and have possession and ownership, legal ownership of the license before you can even make that application.
well, no, what happens, you don't get ownership of it until we approve you, the applicant. So you have an agreement of sale with someone, but that's all contingent upon our approval.
Thank you very much.
Who sets said cost of the license? The owner?
It's what the market will bear. It's between the buyer and the seller.
Ma'am?
Yeah, I have several. Number one, you have conditional and unconditional licenses. I mean, I'm not reading this right, or,
No,
they're all conditional?
it's a conditional licensing agreement. Not every liquor license has a conditional licensing agreement. Like I stated before, a CLA is in addition to what is mandated by the liquor code. That's why I said the liquor code already covers everything concerning a liquor licensing you can think of. Everything from the legal end, from you gotta be 21, and you can't sell to a visibly intoxicated person, all the way to what's necessary to get a liquor license, the application process. So liquor code contains a lot of laws, rules, and regulations that are already state law in the liquor
But you
code.
were
A
saying,
CLA are stipulations that go above that, beyond that.
okay, now,
Most bars don't have that.
okay,
Vast
that's
majority.
what I'm trying to distinguish here, okay? So, the first two, I understand the third and beyond, we can set all kinds of conditions, we can approve or disapprove. But those first two, who
Barnesville United is one of the probably better known neighborhood. And they go out and they talk to the licensees before the transfers occur, before the bars go into business. And they talk to them about a lot of the things that I brought up, a lot of the operational things to keep the neighborhood the way.
We're not opposed to a liquor license, but we want to make sure you're not hurting our community, and here's what we want you to do above and beyond the liquor code.
So it's up to us in the community, whatever
Yes.
group.
So if I could just speak to that for a quick second. So that is where the Community Development Corporation, a committee of that group, which is what we're looking to set up of business owners, community leaders, citizens. That's where we are going to set up, similar to the model of Barnesville, is set up a public hearing. And we're going to ask that potential licensee to bring their business plan to the table and tell us, what is your operation going to be? Are you going to be the Jackman Inn? Then certainly we're going to place some conditions on that license. So we have the ability, if we don't, if the community does not say we want to place a conditional license agreement on it, then the only thing that's going to restrict them is what the LCB says the restrictions are for a liquor license. So it's community.
Yeah, I'm a little confused because one of the gentlemen from the LCB is talking about restaurants with liquor licenses, and the other keeps saying the word bars, bars, bars. So what I want to know is, can a CLA, and I think you might have answered it, can a CLA restrict the degree to which an institution brands and markets itself as a bar?
As it brands,
As a,
for
for instance,
itself?
for instance, as an
I
example,
haven't seen that.
CVS and 565 Grill decides that they want to go after this and they rebrand themselves as the 565 Bar.
You could,
Can our CLA restrict that?
I don't think you restrict their brand.
Yeah.
I understand what brand is. I think you can restrict or seek to restrict how they operate. And if they call themselves the whatever, but they're within your guidelines for their operation, whatever restrictions you agree to, I don't think you can or would.
no, I've never seen that, and if I may, if I misspoke and you're hearing bar, 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 the truth of the matter is there is no bar license. As Mr. Riley said, it's an R license, a restaurant license. They're mandated, a restaurant license is mandated to have seating for 30 people, food for 30 people. All right, they have to have a health permit. Okay, so most of the time when we're talking about liquor licenses, I think the vernacular is just to say bar. We say bars all the time, but it's an R license, a restaurant liquor license. There's no such thing as a bar license.
Mayor.
But there are bars.
There are bars.
Yeah, just one thing I had talked to the gentleman from the LCB before. You mentioned the committee getting together to talk about CLAs, and I'm addressing this to Grant and basically the public. If this passes on May 19th, May 20th, the applications can go in.
Right.
And so I think the committee has to be set up quickly to find parameters for which we want to do. Because otherwise, you only have 30 days for the application goes in.
Certainly. So, thank you, that's a great question. So, going back to that email address, if anybody's interested, so we're dealing in hypotheticals right now. We don't know if this is going to pass. We need to have a game plan on May 20th, if this does pass, because we are going to see that orange placard in a window on May 20th. So, we need to have people that are ready and willing to take on that process. I know that, so I'm on the board of Bellevue Initiative for Growth, and I'm also very involved in a Better Bellevue movement. So I know that there are people that are going to be all over that process. And if people want to be involved in that, please step forward and be involved in that. It needs a community.
Does the conditional licensing have stipulations for
tabs, raffles.
It's a tavern gaming permit, and that allows them to have certain games, certain pull tabs, certain small raffles, that type of thing. So there are situations when they can get a permit for that, and clubs can get a small game chance.
Fraternal clubs, mooses, veterans clubs, things like that. That's more where you see the small games of chance for a couple of reasons. That they've had them forever, and it's just people gravitate that want to play those games for the clubs. Plus, it's very easy for a club license to get a small games of chance license, whereas for a restaurant license, for a bar, as we're calling them, it's very difficult and costly to get that license, and they're not real popular. What have we got, 15,000 retail licenses in Pennsylvania? Who wants to guess within 100 how many gaming permits there are? Win a prize. How many? 3. Within 100. Right, it's 51 throughout the state, so it's not a real popular license. It doesn't seem to be profitable for restaurants.
So again, any gambling issue would be handled by enforcement, and they would then do the enforcement, and the establishment then would be cited for, if there were illegal gambling, if you're talking about like slot machines or something like that, they then would receive a citation for that, and possible arrest depending on the situation. You have to talk on that.
Jane, you had a question?
Yeah, additional license. If I own the property and I own the license, there is no such thing as anybody can put any conditions on me except for the house meeting, and I can turn it into a game bar. My second question is, Mr. Grant, how much money will 2 licenses bring into this community in revenue? And the third part is, I hate to keep throwing Avalon on the bus.
Okay.
They have 7 licenses, and I don't see their time moving. I see them bringing in Dunkin' Donuts and hamburgers and stuff like that.
Okay.
So
The first part of the question was, if you own a building and you own a liquor license in Bellevue, you can turn it into whatever you want.
Well,
So first of all, you can't buy a liquor license in Bellevue without going through a process.
I'm giving you a hypothetical.
Sure.
I own the license, but I
Okay.
have the establishment, I'm good to go. I
Okay.
don't have to do anything.
well, the CLA, conditional licensing agreement, the key word, agreement. So you are right. This isn't, you're right in the extent that you agree to it. Okay, so it's not that the CLA, in this case, if you're trying to get a license, if you don't feel that you want to agree with it, that's certainly your prerogative. It's an agreement.
I just want to make sure everybody understood that section. If I already own the license, if I already own the building, I will return it to the bar.
That doesn't make sense. How can she own one in Bellevue?
Okay, hold on. Slow down. We're not going to get this out of hand, please.
Let me see if I'm very hard of hearing.
Should really be on the mic.
The question is, you already gone through the process,
Yeah.
and are we assuming you don't have a conditional licensing agreement?
No, she does. No, no,
Okay.
yeah.
You applied for the license, it was granted, and there was no conditional licensing agreement. And when you went in business, you were a full-service family restaurant.
No.
Well, let me just get my scenario here. You were a full-service family restaurant when we grant the license. And you started out, well, I have a bar, but you're more a restaurant. That's not working out, and you want to concentrate more on the alcohol sales. Yes, you can do that.
Okay, the second part of the question was, how much will 2 liquor licenses bring into the community? I can't answer that question. What I can tell you is that it will create jobs. So restaurants will create jobs. I can't tell you how successful that restaurant's going to be, so I can't tell you what kind of revenue it's going to drive. If it's a successful restaurant, it could potentially drive, a lot of business into the community. not only to the restaurant, but also to surrounding businesses. But I can't quantify that number. It's not possible. And the third part was?
Avalon.
Avalon, okay.
They got 7 licenses.
Great, I'll address that one real quick. Anybody want to tell me the last liquor license that was issued in Avalon? Via Madre. Has anybody eaten there? Would anybody be ashamed to have that on Lincoln Avenue? Okay, now, the Jackman, Carline, Johnny's Highway, those places have all been in business forever. They pay $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 for the liquor license. You're going to pay 80 grand on the open market right now to buy a liquor license. Who's going to sell dollar drafts on an $80,000 liquor license? Just a question, or an answer to yours.
That's what they're doing right here.
Yeah. Okay, next, Connie, did you have?
If an establishment declines to enter into the CLA, especially the first two, I can see with later applications for transfers that this committee may have some sway, but especially with the first two, if the board comes in and just says, nah, we really don't want to do that, does the LCB hold that against them in any way in granting them a license to operate?
Well, what would happen if they were refusing to, just on application, we're not going to say, hey, you have to have a COA. That's up to you guys to negotiate the COA. If they don't want to do it, then you have, if you're an eligible entity or person, you have the right to protest that license and to go to a hearing, and you present your side, the licensee would present their side, and an administrative law judge would make a decision.
You said an administrative law judge would require the licensee to enter into the CLA?
They can.
Will they?
Depending on the circumstances, just make it form of law. You present your side, your defense, prosecution. The licensees are active, presents their side. You present evidence, and the administrative law judge makes a decision based on that. So I can't say if they will or they won't. You need to take a look at each case.
So the LCB can in fact require an establishment. The LCB can in fact require an establishment to enter into a CLA before granting that license.
Yes, but we wouldn't do it without your input. It's just an application, when they qualify, they'll get the license without a conditional licensing agreement. The community has to get involved before that on the application process. If at renewal time, they already have the license, and then that after, they have violations, we would impose one on them as a condition of renewal. Okay?
But you just told her that if she had a liquor license in that building, she didn't need CLA in order to open.
I said if you didn't have a COA and wanted to change your operational conditions, you could do that. If you had a COA that forbade that operational activity, then you could not violate the COA.
I'm not making taking a side here. I'm just trying to understand whether the CLA can be imposed on a place.
I
She
just
doesn't
said
want to.
that when she asked, she bought or got a license in a building, as far as the CLA, if she doesn't want to enter into one, that's her prerogative. But if there's a protest, and that's what Mr. Rodney was saying, if there's a protest, it'll go before an administrative law judge, and they may be imposed.
Who can protest? Only people 500 feet away.
People 500 feet away, businesses, residents, restricted institutions, churches, hospitals, schools, playgrounds, everybody within 300 feet of restricted institution, or 500 feet within the establishment of businesses or residents would have grounds for protest.
Sir.
Yeah, there was a technical point that I think was on one of the slides earlier, that the licenses, a license to sell or to serve, whatever, one of these restaurant licenses, they're not free-floating. They are already tied to a location, and they get tied to that geographic location anytime either the application is being processed, the transfer is being processed, or the renewal is being processed, right?
The license is granted to an entity
But
for a particular location,
Right.
and it's tied there until they make application to transfer someplace else.
Right. So, since Bellevue is currently a dry borough, there are no facilities, there's no locations within Bellevue that currently have a license.
Correct.
Okay.
So anything that comes into the community would be subject
To the review
to that
process.
public process of tell us what your business plan is and the process of being able to apply a conditional license
And if
agreement.
it ever wanted to move, say they were at 123 Main Street here, and they wanted to move to 124 Main Street, there's another opportunity for that review process to occur.
Correct. That's just like coming in from the first, if they're moving locations, even though in your example, the one across the street,
Right.
they're still moving locations, and you've got a full-blown protest process.
And just real quick to take that one step further. So after number 2, number 3, man, you got a hill to climb because you have to go to council and you have to submit your business proposal to council. Council needs to pass a resolution before you can even apply for the permit or apply for the license. So you need to sell what your business is going to be. And council is not going to approve the Jackman to open in, in the Murphy's building.
Is it fair to say that if this passes, then our elected officials and our citizens are going to have a more active understanding and involvement of economic development issues facing Bellevue?
Certainly. Certainly.
Grant, I appreciate what you are doing and your group is doing for a better Bellevue. And that seems to me to be based on the premise that this passes.
Correct.
What are you doing if it fails?
Repeat the question, please.
So her question was that what we're doing is based on the premise that this passes. And what do we do if it fails? And that's an excellent question because a better Bellevue and Bellevue Initiative for Growth and Revitalization are not going away. We are very involved in the processes that are going on in this community right now. Things such as improve the view, things like that. That's not going to go away. We're still going to look for ways through, through the Pennsylvania PCRG, Community Reinvestment Group. Some of us are pretty active in that group. There's Safe Neighborhood Network through the PCRG. There are other programs that are out there. We're out looking for grant funding and things like that. So we're not going away. We're going to continue to strive for a better Bellevue. There's a lot of deep-rooted people involved in this process, homeowners, business owners, et cetera. So we're asking for more community involvement.
Just to
Yes.
add to that, if I might,
I'm sorry. Yes.
is anyone besides myself like writing Walmart, writing Whole Foods, telling them about the G.C. Murphy building?
Well, so the G.C. Murphy building is for sale for $750,000 as it sits right now.
Right.
I inquired about it. $750,000.
But if anyone in Bellevue is promoting it,
So I've reached out to the guy personally through his real estate agent, and he will not even engage me in conversation. And I would venture to say that some other people have probably had this similar situation. Yes.
Assuming that it passes and you get this group together,
Sure.
business leaders, who do they report to and what would what's the need of that? What does that group do? Do they incorporate? Do they have a nonprofit?
Well, so what we're doing right now is we're kind of following the model that has been set forth. So you heard these gentlemen talk about Lawrenceville United and the Lawrenceville Corporation. Lawrenceville has, correct me if I'm wrong, but they really are the driving force behind this conditional license agreement process. And if anybody's been to Lawrenceville recently, there's a lot of really cool happening restaurants over there. And I'm sorry, they've really cleaned that up. Bloomfield Garfield has used this same model to closed 20-some nuisance bars in the last couple of years. So to answer your question, it needs to be an organized group, whether that rolls up under Bellevue Initiative for Growth and Revitalization, which is a certified 501c3 corporation, or whether it engages as a new 501c3, is to be determined. And I think a lot of that revolves around who's going to get involved, who's going to step up to the plate to make sure that this conditional license agreement piece is a tool that we're using in the community.
And what would the borough council's role be?
Well, so after the first two go in, then council ultimately can propose that conditional license agreement before they even pass a resolution. So if I go and say, I want to open a wing joint and sell dollar drafts on Tuesday nights and quarter wings on Wednesday nights to Bellevue Council, I doubt very seriously that they're going to pass that resolution, because I'm not showing that I'm going to bring a viable business to the community. If I go in and I say, I'm going to open, anybody been to Emporio downtown? Emporio, Mercado, really awesome restaurant down there. But if I bought the Murphy's building and I said, I'm going to turn that into a 3-level meatball joint, pizza joint, and a really upscale beer garden on the roof, and here's what I think I'm going to bring to the community, I think I probably have a pretty decent shot that they're going to okay it. I have no guarantee.
Have a very good history of working together in any way.
Well, you know what?
So I don't understand what a group of citizens and community leaders are going to do to make that happen.
So I could get way off topic here, but I would say that everybody needs to exercise their right to vote. Okay? That is how we make change in the community. Exercise your right to vote.
Lady,
Yes.
that lady in the print, she's had her hand up for a while.
I'm sorry. Where?
The green print.
Oh, yes. I'll get to you next. Yep. I'm sorry.
A smaller restaurant establishment, so they may have like 15 seats in one level, are there any options for them, like, I don't know, maybe sell 6-packs or something?
Sure. You have to have 30 seats. You have to have
Anything less than 30 seats, there's no option.
correct. You have to have a kitchen that's certified by the Allegheny County Department of Health. You have to have 30 seats and the ability to serve 30 people in your establishment to apply for a restaurant license. Sir. Over here.
All right, I didn't take a picture with you, I was at the Women's Department's meeting. I proposed this. Y'all get 2 liquor licenses, correct?
Yes.
Wilkinsburg is 5 because it's 5 per 3,000 people.
1 per 3,000, correct.
Yeah, 1 every 3,000. So what I said is they have to even that out by taking them from the nuisance bars in the south side, or Mount Washington, or Homewood, or the hill where all the shooting and all the trash is in the street. Days after, if we all get on board with that, that's gonna work.
So that's a great thought, but there's no way to mandate where that license can come from. You can't go to an established place.
Because the people on the south side, like Sunday morning, there's trash in the streets.
Sure,
Let's go back to the suburbs.
sure,
It's not a proposal, it's just like, look, even it out. That's how the
Sure.
south side got unregulated with everyone legally not.
So, and again, that's a good point, but here's where those communities got into the situations that they're in. Again, I'll defer to these guys to back me up on this. But if there isn't a community group that is enforcing the conditional license agreement process, then you open yourself up. If there's a council that's just going to say, yep, you can have a license, you can have a license, everybody gets a license. Yep. Okay. Hold on, let him finish.
A lot of the licenses that went into the Carson Street South Side area predated the effective use of conditional licensing agreement. It's a fairly recent process, so as a community starting up the process, you're in a better position than the South Side was.
I understand, but what I'm proposing is, get the 2 here. But what the 2 liquor licenses here, everyone will go out and vote. But what we're talking about with the Wilkinsburg one, all
Okay, well,
And that's been the theme of this whole meeting the
Right.
whole time.
yeah, and we'll have to look at that. I'm gonna move on to the next question real quick. Mark, you're next.
Can you require a percentage of the sales to be restaurant sales?
Yeah.
That can be a condition that's placed in the conditional license agreement, correct? Food sales?
What about the, you say they have to have 30 seats and, a license to cook there?
That's
no
required.
provision right now. I always thought most places have like 30%.
There used to be requirements for percentage for Sunday sales, but they, by and large, gone away. There are food sale requirements that don't tie into the issues of the license, that tie into more, it's called a Pizza Hut exemption, that allow minors to be on the premise without adults. If they're like a 70% food sales, 70% food sales, minors can go in there by themselves. Where they're below 70%, they have to be accompanied by an adult, basically.
That's tied to the sales to minors,
But it's not tied to issuing the license.
yeah, not to the requirement for the restaurant.
But that's something
I think to answer your question, a CLA can speak to food law, right?
Okay. Mark?
Okay, 3 quick parts. I just want to comment on the Avalon thing. We're apples and oranges with Avalon, and especially this fact that Avalon's not seeking to develop their business district. We are. They don't have a business district like ours that we have. So there's really not a comparison of what their bars do for them when they don't have the other things that we have. So, or what we're welcoming and trying to bring into this community. They're not actively seeking that. So it's a very different comparison, but it gets used a lot. Second, my question is on the 30-day protest period. If someone protests on the 29th day, I just want to make it clear to myself and everyone else, it doesn't mean that the group that puts the conditions on the license has to do it in one day, correct? So there's more time than that 30 days. The 30 days is to propose the protest.
The 30-day period is the time frame an eligible entity has to file a protest.
Right. So there's
And
more
then-
time after that.
Then going forward, you can negotiate CLA, you can do whatever you want. You have to get the protest in a timely manner.
Okay, well, there's one more thing.
Okay.
I'll wait.
Gentleman, right? Yes.
Can council put together conditions for restaurant licenses coming in here prior to any permits being sought?
Prior to what? What's the last part of that?
Prior to any permits being sought by existing or new development, can council put in requirements
No,
for the condition?
If you're talking about an ordinance,
Yes.
it was tried in, what is it, community?
Forest Hills.
Forest Hills, they passed an ordinance, and the city of Philadelphia did the same thing, restricting all licenses above and beyond what the state law says, and it was found to be unconstitutional. Where you have control is after your code is filled out in the first two, you can impose, the municipality can impose additional restrictions when someone applies. Okay, you can't pass an ordinance to say, you can't do this. It's above and beyond state law.
Did I see somebody's hand up back in this? Yes, sir, in the red shirt.
Thank you.
Yep.
My point is to Ken, first off, I'm state representative, so sorry, I'm a little incognito, but to follow up on James' question in regards to if someone gets a license and then kind of changes their business plan. I don't know if you're allowed to legally talk about what's happening in Jackson on the north side. Is going through a very similar situation, being challenged through the neighborhood group. I don't know if you're able to touch on that. And it's Grant. I don't know if you met with Lauren Byrne
Yes.
personally, but I know her very well, and my office would be willing to facilitate any sort of meeting if you need that. I know her on a personal basis.
Sure. I met with Lauren in Wilkinsburg with Tracy and Marley over in Wilkinsburg.
Okay.
Hold on, 1 second.
I'm sorry, no, I really can't discuss the particulars of one licensee.
I guess my point was just that there are measures available if someone does change their license plan for the
Oh,
community.
sure, and again,
Go ahead.
it's a great point to bring up because we touched on it before, but throughout the process, throughout the operation of a bar, if a bar starts, or excuse me, a restaurant. If a restaurant regulations that we talk about. The most immediate remedy to that is for the neighborhood, the neighbors to complain, to call the LCE, the State Police Liquor Control Enforcement. At that time, there'll be an investigation in the establishment, and if the establishment is found to be breaking the law, not being compliant, then there'll be a citation issued. And if the citation is issued, it could result in a fine, it could result in a suspension. And the more citations that are issued within a period of time could result then in the establishment being looked at as a possible nuisance bar. And then that means that the LCB will get information not only from the local police department, the Pittsburgh police, or the local borough police, but the LCE from the Allegheny County District Attorney's Office, compile everything together and decide whether the establishment, whether the license should not be renewed or receive possibly a warning. So there are mechanisms throughout the whole process, throughout the operation of a bar, that will address if an establishment decides all of a sudden to change their operation, maybe to operate outside the law. There are all kinds of mechanisms that they can be used.
Okay. But let me just dovetail on that one thing. If they don't have a conditional licensing agreement in place that restricts their operation, and they choose to change their operational theme, they're free to do that. It's when that operational theme becomes a general nuisance to the community that the things Mr. Say said are kicking in here.
Correct.
And if they agree to the CLA and they do not follow what the CLA says, what then happens?
In a case like that, if there's a CLA in place and it's not, they were found not to abide by the CLA, that could also then result, as I said before, a citation against the establishment. The LCE would be able to cite the establishment for failing to adhere to the conditional licensing agreement. And that citation then would result, again, fines, possible suspension, and again, if there are enough citations in a period of time, possibly as taken into consideration as a nuisance bar, possibly considered for non-renewal.
I believe if the CLA was mandated by us, the LCD, because they had been operating disorderly and they violated that CLA, that automatically puts them at non-renewal, the next renewal cycle. Then they have to come to a hearing and show why their license should be renewed. So if you violate this mandated CLA by us, it's serious business.
So yeah, that's
The licensing then?
automatically then.
But then they fight it, if they feel like they're being harassed by the CLA, they can go fight it, and then what happens, they go back to
What
court.
we've been saying is the court, think of it as a court of law. They
Could
can
it
have
ever,
their case,
that CLA ever be removed?
can it be removed?
By the court, the judge says, okay, you're arresting this person with the CLA.
I'm not
And then
familiar
we
with
throw that out
a
and just
county
follow
court
what the
taking away a
CLA.
CLA.
They did that for Rebels Bar on the north side. They did for Rebels Bar on the north side. They revoked their.
On East High Street?
East High Street, yeah, they revoked their license with CLAs and then they appealed it. And
Yeah.
they gave them back the license without CLAs.
Yeah, once it leaves, we said we're not doing it. They appealed to county court, and county court can from our, rule. We would appeal and we do appeal to the next level. And so we run out of day and we either vote or run out of options, we could go back and forth. If we feel we have a strong enough case, we'll appeal to the next higher level court. But yeah, I mean, there's cases and there's several in, Allegheny County where
And just kind of talk about community involvement, because again, if the community said, we're not going to put a conditional license agreement on, the LCB is not going to create that conditional license agreement, but they're going to look at the renewal
that we would be trying to attract. Certainly have those relationships to counsel us, because we don't know. Okay.
So I'll speak to that for a quick second. I'm going to put Kathy on the spot. Kathy and I have been involved quite a bit with the Wilkinsburg CDC that's going through the same thing. We sat at a roundtable meeting in Wilkinsburg CDC office with Lauren from Lawrenceville United and with a couple other people from Lawrenceville United, people from Wilkinsburg Council. Lauren walked us through this exact process. And I have in my folder right, wherever it is, somewhere, that I'll show anybody who wants to see it, exactly what that process looks like, from how they call the public meeting to what they ask the potential license, the applicant to bring to that meeting, exactly what that process looks like, and how the conditional license agreements are developed and walked through. So I'd be happy to share that with anyone. Denise.
Okay, so I think something that we haven't talked a lot about that is extremely important, there is square footage requirements for how much square footage is required for patrons. That doesn't include like the entire store. And then I think that there's a lot of storefronts in Bellevue that would basically be null and void from even getting a license based on the square footage requirements. Can you tell me what that is?
For a restaurant license, our license square footage requirement is 400 feet. And again, 400 square feet.
And that is
That's for patrons, right.
It doesn't include the kitchen, it doesn't.
For instance, you're up behind the bar,
Yes.
not the kitchen.
So where any kind of chairs, seating, tables would go.
Correct.
So everybody realizes basically this whole side of Fiction Avenue, pretty small storefronts.
Chief said.
Is there an appeal process, say that third and fourth license gets denied by council? Is there an appeal process to call the police court or any court higher than that to challenge that ruling on council?
You're saying if we're over the quota and they have to get a municipal resolution and you won't issue it? We won't accept an application over the quota without a municipal resolution. Now, whether or not there's a avenue to circumvent us without it, there probably the avenue they can go to. I don't see it being successful because it's a state law that they have to have a municipal resolution to.
So council's decision would
But
be
the state law saying you can't do it, but I'm sure, you could appeal somewhere.
Yes.
Just to add on to that, I think that the main way to circumvent it, quote unquote, would be for the applicant to go back, revise their plan, make it more acceptable to the council. I'm assuming if you apply and you're rejected with the council or you're trying to get the resolution, you can get it, you can apply again to council if you've improved your plan and you've created something the community wants.
And that's a great point, and I would hope that we have people on the council that would be willing to work with a potential investor in the community to say, hey, that's really not what we have envisioned for our community. Go back to the drawing board. Linda.
Okay, I'm first of all, I have a comment and then I have a question. Okay, I would like to see all this energy go to changing the laws. I know in Illinois that you can get a license that someone can have a liquor license, but they only can serve liquor with a meal. Because I don't think anybody has a problem with serving alcohol in a restaurant where people are eating a meal. Okay, I think that's where all the problems stem from. And they do have that in Illinois, that it has to be a meal, not snacks, and that they serve liquor with a meal. Okay, I'd like to see that energy to go something like that. That would be the best thing for communities like us. And then secondly, the goals of a better Bellevue are goals that we all want. All of us want those goals. We want Bellevue to be thriving and to welcome people in, to have more foot traffic for our businesses, to bring people into our community to purchase our homes. I mean, that's what we want. Personally, though, is liquor the answer to this? I think I need to be convinced that this is really one of the ways to do it. I mean, I see Mia Madre, it's a wonderful restaurant, but I don't see revitalization around it. I saw Cafe
drilling. That has made a significant difference, so that I can guarantee. But what is the model for, does liquor revitalize a community? I need to be convinced.
Sure, I think those are very valid points, Linda. But what I'll ask is, what's changed in the 4 years since the last time it didn't pass? How is our business district better? We have a couple places that have moved in, but we have quite a few that have moved out. Somebody else had their hand up, sir. Yeah, I'm sorry, one more. Oh, good point. So these gentlemen have to leave. So anything else specific to the LCB? Sorry. I'm right back. Okay, Scott is.
Can a CLA restrict hours of operation or sales, like they must close by 12 or no Sunday sales? Can we impose that in the CLA?
Your question is, can a CLA restrict hours of operation?
Here are hours of alcohol sales,
Or hours of what?
or hours or just alcohol sales.
Yeah. Sure. And you can't say, I don't think one was one, and say you can have alcohol sales between noon and 1. But typically you see you gotta close by 10. Midnight, and open before such and such an hour. Yeah.
Sir.
I just said two statements, actually, two comments. One was that it was actually said before, but I think it's important to remember that a CLA is an agreement. It is agreement, implies that there are two parties that come together. It's not something that the PLCD is going to come down and beat these people over the head. And it's unfortunate. I'm probably one of these people in here, but I'm born and raised in Bellevue. And it's unfortunate that this effort has, adding to restaurant licenses in Bellevue is not going to make us Chicago during Prohibition. We have nothing to support the fact that these are going to be nuisance bars, that we're going to have, I'm old enough to remember when Avalon added liquor. They always had beer when they added liquor. They used to have a lot more licenses than they do now. They used to have River Road in. People, I really wish we could dispel this notion that bars are going to bring riffraff into Bellevue. If you were going to have trouble in Bellevue, you're going to have it without bars. You do not need it. We don't need bad press. And as far as people, I don't drink, so I really don't have a dog in this fight. However, like I said, I was born and raised here. I have seen where Bellevue used to be and where it has. And if we don't do something different, we'll never know if it works unless we try it. Yeah.
One last question. I gotta get these guys out. If anybody has questions after these guys leave, it's gonna be the last LTV question. Yes, I have their information. I'll pass it along, and I'll field as many questions as I can. If I can't answer it, I'll pass it on. Sure, sir.